Good morning and welcome to Rise and Unwind, a lifestyle show where we talk about tips, tricks, and fun activities you can do in your own neighborhood. My name's Kayla, and today we've got this.
So for infants, they may have very severe difficulty with breathing and swallowing and meeting their motor milestones.
This season was really fun exploring this. It's a whole different sort of energy between the two of them.
All that and more right here on Rise and Unwind.
Some stories don't fade with time, especially when they involve trust, friendship, and betrayal. The new 3-part Hulu docuseries, Friends Like These, The Murder of Skylar Neese, revisits the 2012 disappearance of a West Virginia teenager and the shocking truth that followed. It's a story told through social media, personal interviews, and voices closest to the case. So joining us this morning are director Claire Titley and former FBI agent and polygraph examiner Dr. Rob Ambrosini. Thank you two for being here. How are you?
Thank you. Good. Thank you.
All right, Claire, what stood out to you about this case and what made you feel like it needed to be revisited now, more than a decade later?
I think one of the things that made me, that was so kind of shocking about this case when I first kind of looked at it was the fact that it's 2012 and it's quite a unique era in a way for social media, because it was that era where social media was new. It was kind of a new frontier. It was the kind of Wild West though as well. And teenagers were experimenting with it. They were just putting their entire lives online. They didn't have the hindsight that we have now about kind of, what could possibly go wrong. But also it was an era where adults weren't really looking at social media. So nobody was kind of checking up on them. There were no sort of checks and balances. And that makes that generation of teenagers at that kind of time particularly unique. They're almost like the guinea pigs of social media.
And the series used Skylar's own words and social media posts that you said. How did that storytelling change the ways this story unfolds for viewers?
I think it was really important to us to try and give Skylar a voice. We didn't want her to just be a kind of a plot point in a true crime, where she's just the kind of victim and has no voice. We really wanted her to have agency in telling her own story, which is harder than it sounds, obviously when she's gone. But she left behind this incredible sort of archive of tweets, of digital messages, but also her own writing as well. So we worked very closely with her parents to make sure that we could just bring her voice kind of front and center, and that she could at least be a part of telling this story from the inside out. So we interview her friends as well, quite comprehensively, so that we can hear this story from the 16-year-old perspective, including Skylar herself.
And Dr. Ambrosini, you spent 24 years with the FBI. You've conducted thousands of polygraph exams. When you look at this case, what role did interviewing and behavioral analysis play in getting the truth?
Well, interviewing really played a significant role. And long before I became involved in the case, the two young girls, they were interviewed by case agents, state troopers, local police investigators. And during that process, you kind of started seeing this evolution of what really should be fact, right? When things are fact, it doesn't change, right? The truth is the truth, and it's always going to be the truth. But there were indications during these interviews that really did result in kind of like this evolution of their story. And of course, when that happens, the logical investigation is, why is this person changing that story, right? So this case is kind of about the behavior that's exhibited, the ideation, what's going on, what are they thinking, and how are they communicating? And that really speaks to the social media that you have here, which again was kind of in its infancy stage, if you will, compared to what it is now. So really, a lot of it did come down to the really significant interviews that the investigators were doing.
And one of the most unsettling aspects is how normal these friendships appeared on the surface. How does this case reveal about the hidden conflict, especially among teenagers?
I think what we really wanted to do with this series was kind of remind people what it's like to be 16. It's very easy to forget when you become an adult, and put that behind you. But about the fact that when you are that age, your brain behaves in such a way that your friends become much more important than your parents, than your family. Everything is very heightened. your reasoning is off, if you like. Your idea of consequences, is very different to that of an adult's. And when you have that combined with social media that is completely unregulated but unwatched by anybody else, that's where the kind of combination was kind of so dangerous, really, I think, particularly for that generation who didn't have the hindsight that we have now.
And Claire, after someone watches all 3 episodes, what do you hope stays with them?
I hope people do reflect on their own use of sort of social media on their children, on their family as well, and remember what it's like to be that age. But also, I hope that they come away from this feeling like they know Skylar, and she would have turned 30 just a few weeks ago. So that's a life that she didn't have. And she should have gone to college. She wanted to be a lawyer. There's all this life that didn't happen. And I'd love for people to come away knowing and remembering Skylar as she was.
Hey, I want to thank you two for joining me today. Friends Like These, The Murder of Skylar Neese, with all 3 episodes available to stream now on Hulu. I want to thank you two for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Some people travel for the sights, some people travel for the food. Braun Strowman does both and usually orders enough for the whole table. The WWE Superstar is back for another season of Everything on the Menu, where he visits some of America's best food cities, meets local legends, and tries everything from neighborhood favorites to high-end dining spots. Joining us now is Braun Strowman. Welcome to the show, my friend. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Just, the season is just unbelievable, man. It's truly cool to see the evolution of where we've gone from season 1 into season 2 with having the guest on the show. My production team in post-production did such an amazing job of filming this and editing it. It really, it makes you feel like you're part of that conversation. You're sitting at that table, you're breaking bread. And at the end of the day, that the idea of this whole show come about with this is my love for going out and taking people out to eat food, getting them to try new experiences in the culinary arts and walk of life, and just have fun. Food is a vessel to bring people together for, to get them together at the table for conversation. I had guests that I'd never met before, so I have new friends. So you're kindling relationships, you're catching up with old friends, you're falling in love. All centered around food. And why not do it with the biggest, baddest SOB on the planet? And you're looking at him right here with Braun Strowman every Friday night on USA Network. Life is absolutely awesome.
All right, this new season takes you to 12 different cities across the country. What were some of the places that really surprised you this time around?
Oh man, honestly, it's always evolving. I'm so excited. I mean, I'm 350 pounds. I didn't get this way by accident. So clearly I'm a foodie as hard as it is. So for me, my day-to-day life, I'm eating out of a Tupperware. I'm weighing out all my proteins, my carbohydrates to the gram. So at the end of all that, like I said, doing this for weeks on end and then getting to do the everything on the menu is my escape as well. It's the ultimate cheat meal. It's getting out there. Not all calories are meant to be the best for your body, but some of them feed your soul. And I make sure I keep my soul fed. I make sure I keep this giant meat castle that I am fed, and then making memories and putting smiles on people's faces. At the end of the day, that's what I love doing. That's what I truly believe I was put on this earth to do, was to entertain and make people happy. And I'm enjoying and loving it along the way.
That's killer. When you spend years traveling for WWE, but the show gives you a chance to experience cities on a completely different way. What do you learn about a place when you sit down and just share a meal there?
It's really neat because how the format of the show, with doing the 2 restaurants every episode, and that first half of the show being the signature dish for that city, for that region, and shining a light, proverbial light, on some of these older restaurants that have been around. All those restaurants I do are 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And, some of them aren't up to date on their social media games and all this. So being able, and then knowing what we did in season 1 of having some of the highest, if not the highest, demo ratings in that 18 to 44, is now knowing that these generational restaurants are getting seen by the next generation. I've talked to people that went to some of these restaurants and they live in the town of it's been there for 6 years. I didn't even know this restaurant was here. So hearing those stories, seeing prime example, Beefy King in Orlando is a roast beef sandwich shop that I went to in season 1. It's been open for almost 60 years. Every time I've gone there since we did that episode there, you can't even get into the parking lot. Before I headed out to start all the crazy media tour and all this other stuff, getting ready season 2 premiere that just happened June 5th. walked in and there was 4 people standing in line that had saw the rerun of the episode the night before. We're in Orlando on vacation. We're like, we have to go to BB King. I walk in, their eyes lit up. No way you're here. They ordered my custom sandwich on it that they put on the menu. So it's really cool to see this resonating with the fans and continuing that buzz and, helping breathe life into some of these restaurants that have been around for a long time that aren't forgotten, but just somewhat aren't, the forefront of the food scene. And then the other half of the restaurant where I go in and do everything on the menu, that's where, you get this opportunity. These restaurants have this opportunity to show their full Rolodex to all the clientele and customers and foodies alike out there. And while all the great food shows that have been before me and stuff like that, you've got to see a little bit of here and there, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 dishes. So with being everything on the menu and seeing this whole, here's my cards, here's what this restaurant has to offer. And then sitting down now, season 2, having a guest with me and being able to have the debates back and forth. What do you taste in this? How do you understand? What is your palate telling you? And then with mine as well. And then having the conversation, talking about life and everything else in between. And it just makes for, all honesty, I wish the show was longer. I think 30 minutes isn't enough.
The season features a pretty incredible mix of guests, from comedians to musicians to athletes and fellow WWE stars. And hopefully next season you bring in bad TV hosts of local TV shows. I'd be happy to have lunch with you.
Everybody likes to eat. Let's go. And don't put yourself down. We don't do that. Lift yourself up. You're a great TV host.
All right. Who else brought the most unexpected energy to the table?
Oh my goodness. Without telling too much, because you got to tune in live every week to watch, I can't be giving away too much. Honestly, it was special every episode. It's so cool because I had so many different walks of life and hearing people's stories and their backstories and what's got them to where they are, what continues to keep them pushing and evolving, and then what their love is for food. It was so cool to see people, starting to understand, or some of the guests that I had, I didn't know they were such foodies. So it's really cool to sit there and have that conversation, because that's the fun thing about food is everybody, it's a little different to everyone, and it's having that opportunity to have that conversation. And like I said, that food is the whole reason that it brings people together. So why not celebrate and eat everything on the menu?
Excellent. After visiting all these restaurants and meeting the people behind them, what do you hope viewers take away from the show, just beyond, just getting hungry watching you eat?
I think the biggest thing for me is trying to get people to step outside their normal comfort zone in their foods. I've discovered my motto in life is I'll try anything twice to make sure I don't like it, especially in the food space. So there's not much at this point that I haven't consumed in my life. That was the blessing that I had with being a WWE superstar for 12 years, traveling all around the world, getting to try so many different walks of life in the culinary space and falling in love with the different cooking techniques and the fusions and the ingredients and all that. And now with everything on the menu, almost every episode, I'm pretty sure, if not, it was few and far between, but I got the guests to try foods that they'd never tried before. So I'm hoping with my blue collar approach, and I'm not educated in the culinary arts. I've just been blessed to travel around and get to eat a lot. 350 pounds didn't happen by accident. And I guess the Lord blessed me with this giant tongue with a bunch of extra taste buds or something like that. I don't know. But that just being said, man, life's so cool, man. It's really neat. Like I said, getting to catch up with some of my friends, get to meet these new personalities and share bread and just talk about life. It just makes for a good time.
Braun, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. For more information and to catch new episodes of Everything on the Menu, check it out Friday nights on USA Network or head to usanetwork.com. Braun Strowman, thanks for hanging out with me, my friend. Some mysteries stay hidden for decades, and sometimes even longer. A new season of Expedition Unknown follows explorer Josh Gates as he travels the world chasing lost civilizations, legendary treasures, and some of history's biggest unanswered questions. One of this season's most remarkable discoveries involves a long-lost World War II shipwreck connected to more than 1,000 missing Allied prisoners of war. Josh Gates joins us now. Welcome to the show, Josh. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
All right, you've spent years investigating mysteries around the world, but this season opens with the discovery of Hofuku Maru. What was it like to be part of a search that carried so much historical and emotional weight?
This is an amazing experience. I'm really excited for folks to see the season premiere. This ship is what's known as a hell ship. It's a part of World War II that myself, and I'm sure many people, really didn't know much about. These were prison ships that were used by the Japanese to transport Allied POWs around the Pacific. And we work with this incredible organization. These guys you see there on the screen, they're part of a group called the Hell Ships Memorial Foundation. These guys have spent years digging through archives, looking for clues as to the location of this ship, the Hafuku Maru. And after 80 years of being lost, their research has led to it being found. So for us to be able to take our viewers there and get a firsthand look at a ship where 1,000 POWs went down is a really emotional thing and a really thrilling expedition that a lot of hard work went into for these guys. And so I'm thrilled to feature their hard work on the show.
And that story of Japanese hell ships isn't really something many people learn about in school. What surprised you most as you dug into this chapter of World War II history?
Well, the scale of it. I mean, there were about 135 of these hell ships that transported, over 100,000 POWs during the war. And many of these ships were sadly bombed by U.S. forces. The Japanese disguised these ships within their military convoys, and so they became unintentional targets for the Allies, making this kind of a doubly tragic story. But the fact of the matter is there are thousands of these POWs still out there that have not been found. And so this is an opportunity to really fulfill that promise of no man left behind, right? And to go and search for them. They've been waiting all this time. So really shocking numbers of people that are still out there, and that there are still big discoveries like this to be made from World War II. So really exciting stuff.
And your team helped locate a wreck that had been lost for more than 80 years. Can you walk us through how modern technology and old archival research came together to make that discovery possible?
Yeah, so the real crux of the discovery is the good old-fashioned sleuthing that was done by this researcher, John Dureski, who's part of the Memorial Hell Ships Foundation. This guy went digging not just in the American archives, but in the Japanese archives. And it was the Japanese archives that offered a clue as to where this ship sank. Many people thought that it sank about 30 miles away from where it was found. Using that research, sonar survey was done. A wreck was located on sonar. We then went out and dove down to really get eyes on this wreck and to begin photogrammetry, which is a photography scan of the wreck to really see it from all angles and to kind of bring it back to life in a way. So yes, it's this combination of good old-fashioned detective work and some high-tech tools.
And this season also takes viewers from underwater wrecks to ancient civilizations, hidden tunnels, and lost treasures. Was there one adventure that pushed you furthest outside of your comfort zone?
Oh, I mean, we go to Mexico in this season searching for the story behind one of Mexico's oldest civilizations, the Zoque. They went way out into the jungles in the Chiapas region of Mexico. This is a really wild part of the Mexican interior and huge caves, huge cliffs. So going underground in Chiapas into the world of the Zoque was hugely demanding, but also just about as exciting as you can imagine. Going out into these caves that nobody has explored to find artifacts that have been sitting down there, offerings that have been sitting in the dark for centuries.
And after all these years of exploring the unknown, what keeps you chasing the next mystery, and what can viewers expect from this new season?
I think it's the same thing that had me interested in this when I was watching The Goonies as a kid. These stories are just naturally incredibly engaging. What kid doesn't dream of finding pirate treasure, secret tunnels, lost civilizations? These stories just have such a natural hook, and they're real. This is real history. And so I think for me, I'm like a kid in a candy store out there. The opportunity to go and explore these stories is the thrill of a lifetime. And to share that with our viewers is really what it's all about.
You're also going on a live tour from city to city across the country. What can we expect from your show?
Yeah, so an evening of legends and mysteries and adventure. If you're a fan of the show, it's an opportunity to dig a little deeper, go behind the scenes. And if you're just finding the show, but you love adventure, and who doesn't, it's a chance to listen to some awesome myths and legends and stories. And so folks can get tickets to that at joshgates.com. It may not be listed yet. Those shows will be coming very soon onto the website there. But it will be an awesome evening of adventure for the whole family. So if you have kids that are into adventure, or if you grew up as a fan of Raiders and Goonies and all that stuff, it's going to be a super fun evening.
Josh Gates, I want to thank you for joining me today. For more information on Expedition Unknown, episode schedules, and behind-the-scenes content, visit discovery.com. And for tickets to Josh Gates' live show, visit joshgates.com. Josh, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thank you so much. Good to see you again.
Have you ever rooted for two characters to finally figure it out, even though life keeps getting in the way? That's a big part of what has fans coming back to Ransom Canyon. Season 2 picks up 6 months later, and with more questions about love, family, and what home really means. Joining us are the stars of the series, Josh Duhamel and Minka Kelly. Welcome to the show, you two. How are you?
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Season 2 picks up 6 months after the finale without giving anything away, where do we find Statton and Quinn emotionally when we see them again?
Well, I think that, if I could take that one, my character is definitely ready to treat this relationship with the care that it deserves. Because I think he realizes after having these 6 months away, he realizes that he probably could have made more of an effort, probably could have done things differently, could have called, could have wrote, could have gone to see her, didn't do any of those things. And I think that he really wants to right the wrongs of, the past mistakes he's made in this relationship. And then he finds out very quickly after that she moved on, and it's too late, dude.
One of the big themes this season is choosing between the life you built and the life you dreamed about. Minka, what makes Quinn's decision so difficult this time around?
Well, she was in New York for 6 months, and, it's a little easier out of sight, out of mind to romanticize this new life that she could possibly live, and meets this new guy who on paper makes so much sense and says and does all the right things. And then she goes home as she'd always planned, and she's then faced with this new version of Statton that she's wanted from him her whole life. And it's a little too late. So now she's in this predicament of, do I turn my back on this new thing that feels fresh and new and potentially promising, or do I take the opportunity, this chance to fulfill this dream of hers, where she comes home, where she realizes that home isn't just this place, it's this person. And that just becomes so undeniable for her. And home is where the heart is.
And Josh, Statton has always been driven by protecting his family's legacy, but this season seems to put love more at the center of his journey. How does that change him?
Well, I think that the two kind of go hand in hand. The ranch has been so part of him and his family for so long that he sort of conflates the two. Like family, land, legacy are all kind of part of all he cares about, really. And when he loses, sorry, I took this hat from the set, I'm going to take it off. When he loses his family in season 1, he sort of loses his purpose and not really sure how he wants to go forward with the ranch. And I think that there's something happens along the way when, I think it's after she leaves, that he really realizes that he wants to share this with her. He doesn't want to go forward without having Quinn with him. And all of these things sort of come together to give him this purpose to keep going with the ranch and keep doing these things that he's done forever. And without her, there's not really much reason to keep doing it.
Also, the chemistry between the two of you has become one of the biggest reasons fans have embraced the show. What is it like continuing that relationship this season now that the stakes are even higher?
I think this season was really fun exploring this. It's a whole different sort of energy between the two of them. It's like she was gone and was able to just sort of, she went to play with the New York Phil and choose herself and live this new fun life out of sight, out of mind, and have some fun for a little while. And then she comes home to this new version of Statton where he's so light and charming and funny, and this is the love of her life. And so that new dynamic between them is really fun in season 2 to play with and to be genuinely charmed by. And so it's a big difference from season 1 and season 2 in that regard, I think, which is really fun.
Josh, Minka, I really want to thank you for hanging out with me today. Ransom Canyon Season 2 is now available to stream on Netflix. Thanks for hanging out with me this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Have you ever heard of spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA? It's a rare genetic disease that causes muscle weakness, and experts say getting diagnosed early can make a real difference. Joining us is Dr. Manisha Korb, a neuromuscular specialist with Palm Beach Neurology. Welcome, Dr. Korb.
Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm excited to be here partnering with Genentech to help raise awareness about spinal muscular atrophy as a paid spokesperson.
For people who may not know much about it, what is spinal muscular atrophy and how is it diagnosed?
Spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, is a rare genetic condition that causes a loss of a protein in the body that is used to support the health of muscles in the body. And so that can look different from person to person depending on the age of onset of symptoms and the type of mutation that a person is born with. So for infants, they may have very severe difficulty with breathing and swallowing and meeting their motor milestones, such as sitting, crawling, standing, or walking. And for those who it presents later in life, where it's in childhood or adolescence, they may achieve those motor milestones, but they may lose the ability to do them over time, where they get weaker and weaker and may revert from walking to having to use a wheelchair later in life. Now, it's diagnosed with a simple genetic blood test, and that can be done with your doctor's office. It's also available in prenatal screening and newborn screening.
How does SMA affect a person's daily life and their ability to stay independent?
Yes, so depending on the age of onset and the type of gene mutation severity that they may have trouble with simple tasks such as breathing and swallowing in the more severe cases. But in milder cases, they may be okay with those parts may be preserved, but they may have trouble using their hands, using their legs. So for example, getting dressed in the morning or preparing food or driving, those things may be impaired. But one thing I want to mention it doesn't do is it does not affect your ability to think or to learn or to have meaningful relationships.
We've seen a lot of progress in treating rare diseases. Can you tell us about Evrysdi and what you consider when deciding if it's the right treatment for a patient?
For a long time, the only methods we had to treat SMA were with supportive therapies, things like physical therapy and ambulatory assistive devices, which still play a major role in how we manage SMA now. But in the last 10 years, there have been massive leaps in the space of disease-modifying therapies. So those are therapies that are treating the root cause of the gene mutation and helping change the overall course of the disease. The one I want to highlight today is called Evrysdi, also called risdiplam. This is the first orally administered medication that is FDA approved, and it's for all ages of SMA, infants, children, and adults. It works by restoring that protein that's deficient and helping the muscles sustain their function over time and slowing down disease, stabilizing it, and in some cases even allowing the person to get stronger and meet motor milestones. But with all medications, we have to think about side effects. In adults, the most common side effects are fever, diarrhea, and rash. But as this is an oral medication, it can provide a more consistent and daily routine for patients who are looking for something that allows them to have that flexibility.
If someone in our audience has recently learned that they or a loved one has SMA, what message of hope or advice would you want to share?
Well, SMA is something that someone is born with and carries as a lifelong condition. It doesn't have to limit them or define them in everything that they do and everything that they want to achieve. I've seen many patients with SMA who are able to achieve advanced degrees, become doctors, lawyers, or business owners, and they can have meaningful relationships and their own families. So if they have access to a disease-modifying therapy, they can, again, change the overall course of their disease and hopefully prevent that overall progression, slow things down, and maybe even get stronger, sustain those motor functions for longer. So I encourage people to visit Evrysdi.com for more information and talk to their healthcare providers.
Dr. Korb, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
And that does it for today's episode of Rise Unwind, aka your weekly excuse to procrastinate productively. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Truly, you could be anywhere, and yet you chose this delightful show. We appreciate that. Make sure you follow our socials at Rise Unwind, and check out the website to stay updated at riseunwindtv.com. Stay fabulous, stay curious, and stay slightly over-caffeinated, and we'll see you next week on Rise and Unwind.